Hello, my name is Laura Dal Ballesta, and this is my submission for Critical Studies Computational Ethics. The topic I've chosen to explore is the ethical implications of smart toys and children's data privacy. So here are some of my references that I will link in the portfolio, and I'm going to start with a brief definition so we understand what are we referring to when we talk about smart toys. So smart toys are devices consisting of a physical toy component that connects to one or more toy computing services like networking and sensory technologies to enhance the functionality of a traditional toy. What distinguishes smart toys from electronic games is the existence in the form of a physical entity, and they can link the virtual world and reality to create multi-dimensional play environments. Additionally, smart toys incorporate sophisticated sensors, actuators, and chips, and wireless communication equipment that support the use and interaction of multimedia. So why is this an ethical problem, and why are we talking about smart toys? Well, smart toys pose ethical concerns for children's data privacy as they collect sensitive information without clear, informed consent. Privacy risks, including potential breaches and misuse, highlight the need for transparency. Security vulnerabilities and data profiling can allow unauthorized access and exploitation of children. Legal and regulatory gaps make accountability challenging, emphasizing the necessity for responsible and transparent practices in the development and use of smart toys. So we're going to go through each one of those statements individually in this mind map, but first I'm going to briefly look over the toy industry. So there's an industry shift towards smart toys. There's a fast growth in the market. The current global smart toy market is valued at around $50 billion and is expected to reach in the US $70 billion by 2026. There's an evolution of traditional toy designs. Smart toys incorporate technology into a traditional product to achieve a playing environment through multimedia use and interactive usability. There's a diversification of types of smart toys. So several smart toys are related to 3 types of activity, according to Comus. So organized educational activity, free game, or a combination of both. So there's an increase in popularity among consumers. They're willing to pay more. So a toy's perceived innovativeness positively promotes the consumer's willingness to pay as a consequence. So that's the state of the current market of smart toys. I can briefly mention some leading companies in the shift. First one is Lego. They have the famous Lego Mindstorms, a brief launch of Lego Video that was taken off of the market because of privacy concerns of children sharing video. So that didn't live long. There's also Anki with the Cosmobot or the Vectorbot. VTech, that's for younger kids. They have a smartwatch. Mattel has Fisher-Price Codapillar and Pictionary vs. AI, which is quite recent. Where families can play Pictionary against an AI. So briefly, I'm going to go over the positives and the negatives of smart toys. Why do they exist? If they have all these ethical implications, why would they even exist in the first place? Well, they have lots of positives. Many smart toys are designed to be educational, helping children learn new concepts in a fun and interactive way. They're great for teaching coding, mathematics, language development, and STEM concepts. They're great for that. They can support the development of various skills, including problem solving, creativity, and critical thinking. Smart toys often provide interactive experiences, making learning more engaging for children. They can adapt to a child's skill level, providing a personalized learning experience. I think that last one is more relevant nowadays with the introduction of AI that can learn from children's data. The negatives are privacy and security of children's information that we'll go into in depth later. So data breaches or unauthorized access, sharing and selling data, data profiling, and the long-term effects on children's mental health and development. Over-reliance on technology for entertainment and learning. So prolonged screen time, eye strain, sedentary behavior, and disrupted sleep patterns. The cost and accessibility of smart toys. Economic disparities may contribute to unequal opportunities for learning and play. And parents may have limited control over the content and advertisements that children are exposed to through smart toys, which is what we're going to go into in a second. So, one of the main branches of what I'm going to talk about is beneficence. Who benefits from smart toys and data collection and children given their data? So we're going to talk about the industry, how the industry profits from data collection. We're also going to talk about analytics on playtime and attention spans briefly. And lastly, we're going to talk about external hacking and security breaches and look into some case studies, as I said earlier, in the case of Mattel and VTech. So monetization strategies. The two main monetization strategies is either selling data or sharing data. So selling data is, as it sounds, is exchanging data for money. So it's selling a consumer's personal information by the business to a third party for monetary or other valuable consideration. When we mean other valuable consideration, we are also going into the territory of sharing data. So sharing a consumer's data includes transactions between a business and a third party in which no money is exchanged, but it's considered a form of data monetization because it could be exchanged for other valuable information or resources. There are business models that rely on data and data sharing. So there's cross-context behavioral advertising. We all know it, unfortunately. Whenever you mention something, it seems like your phone can show you an advertisement of what you have mentioned. So cross-context behavioral advertising, it's the targeting of advertising to a consumer based on the child's personal information that is obtained from the consumer's activity across businesses, branded websites, toys, applications, or services, other than the business with which the consumer intentionally interacts. Profiling. Companies can create a profile about a child reflecting on their preferences, attention spans, characteristics, psychological trends, behavior, attitudes, intelligence, and abilities. Companies can then use that profile to adapt their product to the child, but legally, companies are not allowed to use its information to alter the child's experience outside of the current interaction with the product that they're using. So theoretically, they aren't able to sell that data or share it with third parties. But unfortunately, as we're going to look into it later, there are quite a few loopholes. Finally, there's tracking. It enables a third party to display advertisements on other apps and services across the internet based on the user's cookies or other trackers. There's a big issue with everything that I've just mentioned in terms of data collection, which is there are unclear opt-out options. So protection laws enable consumers to opt out of a company selling their data, but the definition of what selling data means is unclear. As we mentioned earlier, there's selling data and sharing data, which can start to blur the line. An estimated 65% of companies that disclose they do not sell data engage in one or more data monetization practices like profiling, tracking, and cross-context advertising. So as we can see, the industry isn't too good at keeping their promises in terms of data profiling and data collection. In terms of children, companies can develop analytics on playtime and children's attention spans and what children like to play with more. So, the collection of play-related data. A study analyzed data collection and sharing practices of 451 apps played by preschool students. It examined data collection and sharing practices of apps played by preschool-aged children and tested differences by child characteristics. The findings suggest that the collection and sharing of children's data are highly prevalent and disparities exist by parent education. So that's an example of collecting play-related data, but private companies do the same. The use of analytics for product development. So companies can develop internal products based on the analytics that they receive from the smart toys. And illegally, they can also share and sell that data, which is quite concerning in regards to children. Another issue in terms of beneficence, who is benefiting from smart toys? Unfortunately, smart toys are quite at the risk of external hacking and security breaches, which is awful, and also jailbreaking. People can do that with smart toys too. So data breaches is one of the ways that external hackers can gain access to children's information. So login details leaked, children are less likely to change their passwords. So there was a big security breach with the company VTech. Over 200,000 kids' data was leaked. It was extracted from children's records from its Learning Lodge app store that contained contact information from parents, full names, genders, addresses, dates of birth, IP addresses, secret security questions, and download histories. All of this information is particularly dangerous for external hackers to have, because you can know where a child lives, you can maybe know the parents' security questions that could sometimes be the same security questions for other services like bank details. You have full names and you have the contact information from parents, which is just very dangerous. So why did this happen? It happened due to limited budgets for tech. Many smart toy makers have weak security and privacy policies. This one in particular used outdated protocols. Its standard practice, the hash passcodes, like MD5, is a particularly weak hashing algorithm, and it was quite easy for hackers to intercept this information. What can hackers do now with this information? Unfortunately, there's a thing that is quite prevalent, that is child identity theft. Where valuable information can be used to commit fraud. Child identities are being stolen and exploited to commit fraud, according to Power. In the US, children's social security numbers are uniquely valuable because they lack a credit history and they can be paired with any name and any birth date. Children's data is targeted by cybercriminals because children are less likely to know that they have been a victim of identity theft. Children may find out about this decades later when they apply for credit or employment or try and buy a new car. This is an example of a data breach, but let's look into the smart toys themselves. So this is a case study of Hello Barbie, which is a toy by Mattel. Researcher Matthew Jakubowski hacked Hello Barbie and collected data including the names of Wi-Fi networks and identified details of accounts and MP3 files recorded from the children's voices. Hello Barbie connects to ToyTalk's cloud services and operates like a chatbot, kind of like Siri, using voice recognition and artificial intelligence to craft personalized responses. This connection to the cloud allows for security breaches. The next block of my mind map and my presentation is respect. Data privacy for children. Are kids informed and have parents consented? Who consents to children's data usage, and is this respecting children? So let's start by examining consent in the context of minors. The child's capacity to consent comes from their level of maturity. If the child does not have the cognitive ability to understand the situation, the consent should then be provided by the parent or guardian. In 1998, the Federal Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, effective as of April 2000, was introduced in the United States. This legislation was amended in 2013 because of the increase in internet use of children. This allowed marketing companies to collect lists of children's personal information and behavioral data that were then sold to third parties. Challenges in obtaining informed consent. So, industry responsibility in ensuring consent. COPPA, which is the Child Online Privacy Protection Act, says that online service providers must obtain verifiable parental consent before personal information of children is collected, used, or disclosed. Is this respecting children? It's worth mentioning that children's right to privacy and having private spaces away from parents. Making parents involved in children's access to the digital world through privacy and data collection laws essentially contradicts this right in the case of obtaining verifiable parental consent before personal information is closed. That doesn't allow children to have their own personal lives. So parental versus child consent. The minimum age to consent to personal data processing varies in European Union, ranging from 14 to 16 years old. Over this age, the child should be able to provide consent or not. Legal and ethical considerations. So the UN Convention of the Rights of the Child shows that children are not properly protected and that some of these rules actually clash with other children's rights. Is protection. So the UNCRC Article 16 provides no child shall be subjected to arbitrary or unlawful interference with his or her privacy, family, home, or correspondences, nor to unlawful attacks on his or her honor and reputation. Other rights are the right to participation, the right to emancipation, the right to personal development. So the right to control over personal information that constructs and determines the child's digital identities. Privacy and data protection law loses sight of the importance of these 4 pillars to find a healthy balance when dividing consent decisions on personal information between minors and parents. Another really important right that I briefly want to mention is the right to erasure, so the right to be forgotten. The GDPR confirms children have the right to erasure of personal data. Children have the right to explore and experiment with their identity. The searchability of online information can negatively affect this exploration. As they grow older, they should be able to not be linked to information which they do not longer identify with. This is particularly important when searching for jobs. So the third block I want to mention in terms of smart toys and the ethics surrounding them is justice. Is selling data just? Children giving their data just without them knowing, children giving their data for free for market purposes. Children may not fully understand the implications of sharing personal data. The extent to which children are aware of data collection methods, for example, cookies, tracking, and profiling. All of these data collection methods limit the control children have over their information and their public identities. And as we mentioned earlier, not always they are capable of deleting these public identities. Corporate responsibility. So companies don't usually take accountability or employ the right prevention tactics to avoid misuse. So another important thing is data mining and discrimination. So manipulated, uncritiqued, or opaque algorithms can create conscious discrimination that can affect particularly vulnerable groups, such as by geographical location or health profile. Data profiling of children and data collection can also come up with biased interpretations. Discrimination may result from proportional misinterpretation, under or over-representation of marginalized groups, leading to inaccurate conclusions, rankings, and skewed decision-making. Also, poor quality or unrepresentative data. Discrimination may result from overdependence on specific data sources for decision-making to the detriment of verifiable or nuanced approaches. The value of data that children give for free. The value of information is not used solely for its primary purpose, but also in potential secondary uses. So how can children and adults give permission to use their data for unknown purposes? Children are more susceptible than adults to the long-term ramifications and inappropriate applications of data because it will follow them their lifetime. The collection of children's data attempts to catch up with the technologies and applications that safeguard them. Legislation and safeguarding procedures usually, unfortunately, come after, but we're going to describe in the next and final block things we can do to avoid that. So data minimization and proposed solutions. Designing for Privacy by Design by Cavoukian gives 7 foundational principles that we're going to look into now to avoid negative utilization of data. So preventative, not remedial. As we mentioned earlier, trying to prevent privacy invasive events before they actually happen. So thinking ahead and implementing legislation and safeguarding ahead of the issue, and trying to set legislation before and not after the misuse. Privacy is the default setting. Personal data is automatically protected. If an individual does nothing, so choose the settings or the cookies, they are still protected. So protection as a default. Data minimization limits the collection of personal information to what directly is relevant and necessary to accomplish a specified purpose. Personal data must be adequate, relevant, and limited to what is necessary in relation to the purposes for which they are processed. Non-identifiable interactions and transactions as the default. The data minimization principle is expressed in Article 51C of the GDPR. Also, linkability of personal information should be minimized. So even if you limit the collection of personal information, make sure that the information that you do really need to collect, that you can't link it to other data sources to find the person's identity through comparing data sources. Collection limitation, limiting data to which is necessary for the specified purpose. The next pillars are privacy embedded into design. Privacy becomes an essential component of the functionality and design, integrated into the system and not seen as an add-on after the fact. So designing with privacy in mind. Full functionality, positive sum, not zero sum. avoiding unnecessary trade-offs that are made for functionality versus security and privacy, end-to-end security, all data securely retained and then destroyed at the end of the process in a timely fashion. Important, in a timely fashion. We want necessary data to be collected, but then destroyed as soon as possible. Visibility and transparency. All privacy-related policies and procedures shall be documented and communicated as appropriate. Respect for user privacy, keep it user-centric. Keep the interests of the individual as the focus. So always keeping in mind the best interest of the individual, and in this case, the best interest of the child when designing and developing these systems. So respecting the rights of children, incorporating child rights in design. As we mentioned, those previous 4 child rights that are some of the most important to keep in mind. Ensuring a child-centric approach. Informing and educating parents, so the importance of parental education. It equips parents to educate and guide their children, making informed, safe choices online, ensuring their digital well-being and privacy protection. Outreach programs and resources. So I found 3 examples of some great outreach programs. Common Sense Privacy Program is a great educational initiative. NetSmarts Kids is more aimed towards children, and Privacy Information for Kids, PIK, is another great resource. Finally, I want to briefly mention the role of schools and educational institutions, so collaborations between industry and education. 2 examples are the Family Online Safety Institute, or FOSI, and the Children's Advertising Review Unit, CARU, which worked with advertisers and online service providers to ensure that advertising and data collection practices aimed at children comply with privacy regulations. And finally, it's worth mentioning promoting awareness for both parents and children and the industry of this topic. Here are the references that I'm going to put in a PDF file and order them alphabetically, because I know you have to order them alphabetically. Yes, that is my presentation for the ethical implications of smart toys and children's data privacy. I hope you enjoyed, and if there's any questions or any additional information, I will add it into the portfolio. If I've missed anything, I'm going to add it into my submission and portfolio. I hope you enjoyed it and that you've learned something from this video, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye!